Hey, how's it going? It's been less than a week since Hull Festival, and I'm already recording this video, so I have a lot of thoughts to share. I've been my mind has been spinning, thinking about everything that's happened since then, so I'm so excited to share it. So strap in, this is probably going to be quite a long video, but hopefully worth it. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Max. I'm an artist. I draw men. I draw gay stuff generally, I guess, and I have been so hyped about my first Hull Festival this year, which happened a week ago. If you saw my previous video, I was very, very excited. It feels like my year has been building up to Hull Festival in many ways, and I'm happy to say it did not disappoint at all. In fact, it exceeded my expectations somehow. Yeah, it was truly a fantastic experience, and I'm going to take you through every little bit of it so you can come along with me as I go to Hull Festival and see what it's all about. So, firstly, some brief history. Hull Festival was founded in 2017 as kind of like at the time, small queer kind of electronic music festival just outside of Berlin, and it's grown rapidly since then. It's now, I think, 9,000 people attend each year. They have 9,000 tickets, so it's a very big thing. It's hosted in this place called Ferropolis, which is about 2.5 hours outside of Berlin by coach. It's this old open coal mine that was excavated and then has been filled in to create this lake and this peninsula, and all the machines are kind of gathered in the middle of this peninsula, I think as a museum when it's not being used for festivals, and it's really quite a special place. It lasts 3 days, so it starts on Friday and finishes, well, on Monday morning, so yeah, technically 3 days. So it is a long one. I don't think I've done a festival this long before, so I knew it was going to be exhausting. It's a sort of the pact you make going into it that you're going to be dead by the end of it, but feeling really, really fulfilled. So last Thursday evening, I flew out of London Gatwick with my best friend Matham, and we flew to Berlin. We stayed there overnight next to the station Ostbahnhof, which is where the coach collects you to take you to Hull Festival, so it was just very convenient. So just stayed there overnight and then got the coach at, it was 8:40 a.m. I got a very early coach because I have quite a few friends who've been to Hull Festival before, and I was following along last year, and there were some really bad queues to get in. So everyone was saying that you got to get there early as possible. You don't want to be stuck in a queue for 3 hours, etc., etc. So I was like, okay, we'll just do that. So yeah, I got the very early coach, even though I'm not a morning person at all. Yeah, went out of Berlin, just kind of chilled on the coach for a while, listened to music with Matham, and yeah, it was just a good little chill time. Then we arrived at Ferropolis after about 2.5 hours, so it's getting close to midday, and jumped straight in the queue. The queue was not too bad. It was very hot and humid. We were there for about an hour and a half, which I think is okay considering really the amount of people they have to process, it's to be expected. Yeah, so we're just kind of snaking along in this queue, and then finally just got let in, and fortunately the two friends we were staying with in our tent, we went for the glamping option, had already collected the pass for the tent, so we didn't have to wait for that. Not that there was a queue anyway, so we could just go straight to our tent, which was amazing. Get settled right in, yeah, very cozy. Yeah, the organisation, as far as I could tell, was really good compared to previous years. I say this is my first time, but from what I've heard, last year's could be a bit rough, so they've really kind of honed this down a bit and perfected things. So after getting to the tent, we just chucked our stuff down, and everyone was going to this beach area, not to be confused with the beach stage, but it's just this beach area near the camping grounds, because the festival grounds weren't open yet. They were due to open at that stage at 2 p.m. So I thought we'd go there for a bit and just hang out. So there was tons of people there. Some going in the lake. I didn't do that because I have to put lots of sun cream on wherever I go, and if I go in the lake, it's gonna wash it off. I just can't be bothered. So I just kind of stuck by the side. So after hanging out there for a bit, we went back to our tent. The plan was to then go to the festival grounds for 2, but it had been delayed. I think to that point till 5 p.m. or something like that. So we just waited around in our tent for a while. My friends Matham and Tom did some exercises, not for a pump, but it's because Matham had like injured himself the other week on his bike, so he was just doing some exercises to kind of like loosen up, I guess. And I couldn't be bothered, so I was just like hanging out on the bed. Then we got a notification that the festival opening had been delayed till 6 p.m. because there was a storm coming. So I kind of stepped outside to look, and there's this like gigantic cloud in the sky. And you could tell that the weather was going to change. It was like very humid and warm, like kind of like pre-storm conditions. So yeah, it was very soon it got very windy, the temperature dropped, which honestly was a gigantic relief because it was really hot. In those tents, it can get really stuffy very quickly. So when it rains, it's actually really nice, honestly. So the wind was really welcome. The storm was great. That lasted a little while, and then we were just getting ourselves ready to head to the campground, to head to the festival ground, which was now due to open at 7 p.m. So we went to the coach, because there's a little coach that they have which runs between the festival ground and the campground, because otherwise it's about a 15-20 minute walk between the two. So we just jumped on the coach, and it turned out we were the first people there. So we were queuing up just as the place opened, which was really special for a first time. I was so happy to be there and to kind of like see the place completely empty and be the first ones walking in. It was really nice. So it gave me a good chance to have a look around and just kind of like take it all in. So yeah, obviously the cranes get your attention straight away. They're very close to the entrance, and then we're just having a wander around, trying to get my bearings, trying to understand the layout of the place. Went through the forest stage, which was really cool. I could tell that was going to be a very cool place. And then we ended up at the beach stage. For the opening, I was wearing my Free Palestine crop top. And I wore this because I wanted to show solidarity. You know, Hole is a queer event, so I didn't think it'd be particularly controversial to say Free Palestine there. Turns out there were actually a lot of Israelis there, way more Israelis than I imagined. Um, and I got my first experience in that moment near the beach stage. There was a guy who was like an attractive guy, started talking to me, and then he looked at my top and he said, that you're so hot, but that is such a turn off. And I was just so confused. I didn't quite understand what he meant at that point because I didn't know he was Israeli at that stage, and also, yeah, just being told that it's a turn off as opposed to kind of like political disagreements or something like that was just very strange because it kind of like frames it as kind of like part of like a sexual appeal thing. Like I'm wearing this for like, and that this detracts from my sexual appeal as if that matters to me, like as if I care, as if I wore this for that reason. Obviously, I didn't. Yeah, you can just see some people just think with a very kind of like one track mind. And it did make me wonder like some I've had these experiences before with Israeli guys where they see like a conventionally attractive white person, muscular white person, and then they see that I support Palestine, and it kind of like short circuits their brain a little bit. They don't really know what to say. And so they kind of go for this kind of like, oh, it's you know, you're so hot, but, you know, you're so hot, but. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't, sure, whatever, whether you think I'm hot or not really doesn't matter to me. And it did make me wonder, you know, like if I had been brown or Arabic or whatever, what kind of reaction I would have got from him then if it had been even worse. Because he wasn't like vicious about this, it was very confusing. He then came to me like shortly afterwards and said, that my top is very triggering to him because he quote unquote lives the conflict, which for anyone who knows anything about the genocide in Gaza, for someone to say, for someone who lives in Tel Aviv to say they live the conflict is a bit like, okay, sure, right, bet sure you do. Yeah, so I just said to him, and I made sure my voice wasn't like malicious or anything like that. I just said to him very simply, I was like, well, you're just gonna have to stay triggered. I'm keeping the top on, and it is what it is. It's just that's that. And he didn't have anything to say to that, so he then wandered off, and apparently he spoke to my friend Matham and told him that I need to take my top off. So it was like complaining. If you're familiar with like Zionists, this is very kind of like common. They kind of like complain and cry and whinge, it's to be expected. If anything, that just made me like make sure I'm going to keep this top on for as long as I can. Like, obviously I'm not going to keep it on the whole night, but like I'm going to keep it on an extra couple of hours just because of that. Though having said all that, very shortly afterwards there was a different Israeli guy who came up to me and he says, I love your top and I agree with everything, basically. Not word for word, but he said something along those lines. So that was really nice, and we had a hug and stuff like that and shared a nice moment. So there is hope, and it's not every Israeli. I do like to give people the benefit of the doubt, even if in the vast majority of cases they are going to be your typical Zionist Israeli. There are those who aren't, so that was a really nice moment. So with that little crumb of drama out of the way, I then went up to the beach stage. It kind of goes out into the water, and there's kind of like platforms on either side, and then there's the DJ booth, which is always shaped like this, the head of this kind of like creature, and it kind of changes every year. It was really cool. So we went to stand on the side on these platforms that go out into the water, and we're just kind of dancing. It was also nice because I was had this conversation with the Israeli in my mind, and I was like, well, I want to make sure I'm visible with this top, because I didn't really see many people, if any, with pro-Palestine stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm in a prominent location so they can all see me. Not that I'm looking for confrontation, but I do want to make a point, So yeah, we're just dancing, having a good time. Spent ages there. It really felt like an opening ceremony for the entire festival. Was at beach stage. I don't know, because there's the water there, there's the forest, and then there's this like big open expanse of the sky. It feels very much like it feels like the right place to kind of like commence and kind of start things. I don't know, like it's like a full circle there, say from water to forest to sky. It's just kind of like a cyclical nature to the area. I don't know. So it felt like everyone was gathering there. We spent ages there. I saw Elvis for the first time there. He came up. If you've seen my other video, Elvis is a very good friend of mine. He is pretty iconic on the party scene. He often wears this white wig and goes by the name Diana, and she's amazing. She always brings the life to every party. Everyone's obsessed with her, myself included. I always have such a good time with Elvis, so it was a real joy seeing him. Yeah, the music was really good. There were people who would go into the water and splash and dance around, having the time of their lives. It was really nice to see such kind of like a mixed, diverse crowd, and everyone just having a great time and enjoying themselves. It was so beautiful. I felt so privileged to be there. Anyway, after a few hours at the beach stage, then went to the forest, where the party had really picked up. And I met another Israeli guy there, very handsome. Obviously, I was a bit kind of wary, but I give people the benefit of the doubt. We exchanged Instagrams. The Palestine flag is all over my Instagram profile, so I just let that do the job for me. I'm like, if they see that, they know. So I spent a bit of time with him and then moved on to look around to kind of see everything else that was going on. There was a performance stage where they were hosting a talent show. You could apply before the start of Whole Festival, and then they would let you know if you'd been accepted. And then all through the night, there were different performances of just like people doing creative stuff. It could be anything really. So I saw like 2 or 3 performances there. I didn't want to spend the whole night there, but it was really good. The crowd was very cool, very mixed again, and there was a really nice atmosphere, and it's just you didn't know what to expect, what people were going to do for their performance, so that was really nice to see. Then I went to the Trina stage, which is this kind of like very diverse, like music from lots of different ethnicities going on there, and that was a really had a really good vibe to it, so I spent a bit of time there. you would see that different crowds of people would kind of like congregate in different areas. Like the Forest was definitely more kind of like the stereotypical muscle gay stage, I guess. Trina was a lot more mixed, very diverse. Arena was kind of half and half, still pretty mixed. Beach, pretty mixed as well. Yeah, it was overall, I think, like a pretty good balance. Yeah, there were definitely quite a lot of kind of like your normal kind of party gays there, which, you know, I guess I fall into that category. I don't know. And I know there have been complaints from people on previous years that the event is gradually getting taken over by, you know, like white cis muscle gays who are very inconsiderate and kind of like ignore or kind of like very disrespectful to people they don't consider sexually attractive. And I don't know, obviously, from my perspective, I have my own perspective on that. I don't really encounter that kind of disrespect because I'm seen as one of them. So I don't know. But from what I've heard, it was a better year this year. It was actually less toxic, if you want to say, than previous years. So that was really nice. And yeah, I did see kind of like big populations of kind of like muscular guys walking around, but there are also lots of other people. And I think you just had to know where to look to find them a lot of the times. So I had a good wander around just so that I would kind of really understand the place for the coming days. Then I went back to the beach stage and spent quite a few hours there.
Let me tell you,
And that's where I had like my first really special moment of the festival with Elvis. So I was definitely in an enhanced state of mind, shall we say. If you, the letter of the alphabet between J and L, you know, I think you can figure out that's kind of the headspace I was in. If you know, you know. And I don't know, it put me in a very kind of very peaceful, kind of like almost spiritual kind of like state of mind. And Elvis and I have had moments like this before where we can just like spend time together, hug one another, look into each other's eyes, and really kind of like bond in a very deep, meaningful way. And it's always so special every time. We know each other very well and know what each of us have like been going through in life, so we could really be there for one another. And yeah, it was just a beautiful moment. There was a moment where he kind of like got his fan out. He had his Diana wig on and was like wafting himself, and it felt like he was moving all the winds of the earth at the same time. It was like woof. It was very very powerful, and I felt very connected to everything. Looking at the sky and the clouds, the kind of like forest around, and then seeing the water as well. It was all, and then this was happening as the sun was coming up, so it was gradually getting lighter. Yeah, it was just, yeah, it was magical. Then we finished the morning at Arena. We found this guy who was, I think, possibly G'ing out. He was like very much like out of it. So we spent a bit of time with him and took him to the awareness tent. Hole is really good. They have various teams around to take care of people, you know, who might be feeling unwell for whatever reason. So we guided him up there, and then as soon as he saw where he was going, it kind of like shocked him, and he was like, "Ugh," and he kind of like staggered away. He was like, "I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine." We were like, "You're not fine," but it, I guess what we did its job. It woke him up for sure. Like he was like much more awake after he saw that. So I consider that job done. And then after that, I decided it was time for me to head back to the camp and try and get some sleep. So I decided to walk back. It was a really nice walk. The sun was coming up and hitting the trees. I was just walking along with various other people back to the camp. Yeah, it was nice. So that brings me to day two. I slept probably about 3 hours. It was not good because the thing is, once the sun comes up and hits those tents, the temperature within the tents raises by about 10 degrees within the span of about half an hour, and then it just becomes impossible to sleep. And it's like, So, yeah, that's the only problem with the tents, I would say. But I showered, had some food, had this really nice jackfruit burrito. So I felt mostly human. And then it was time to get dressed up because day two was going to be our Bob day. Matham and I had brought these Bob wigs to wear to go with Elvis because he always brings a wig to a party. So the plan was to kind of like have our colourful wigs and be dancing around. I had this silver bra, silver like mini skirt, these kind of like black fishnet shorts. And that combined with my kind of like bright kind of like lime green wig, I felt was quite the look. I was really happy with that. So we got dressed up and then headed to the festival again. Once again, we went straight to the beach stage where everyone was gathering. Like this was probably like early evening, I guess, at this point. And yeah, we got up in the exact same place as yesterday, the previous day, and we had our wigs on, we were dancing. Elvis arrived. This time he was in the character of Miss Honey, who is this gigantic wig, pink wig, with these like black gloves on, going up to his forearms and stuff like that. Very elegant, beautiful, very easy to find as well in a crowd, very useful. And yeah, he really stole the show. It was just like, oof, a magnificent look. So like him dressed up like that, and then we had our bobs on. We got our friend Tom the Diana wig, so he was wearing the Diana wig, the white bob wig, and we were just dancing around, having a good time. Yeah, it was really good fun because that's what Whole Festival is all about, right? It was really nice to kind of like have fun and be able to subvert the kind of like cis white muscular gay expectations, you know, and kind of be a bit silly, not take ourselves too seriously. You know, it's not all about trying to look as hot as possible at every moment, you know, looking for sex constantly. It's about, you know, having fun and being part of a community. Yeah, I think we got noticed by quite a lot of people up on the side of the beach stage, and we were bringing a really good vibe. So it was really nice to be right in the middle of things and just having a fantastic time with everyone. So yeah, we spent quite a few hours dancing at beach and what you could say was drag, I guess. It was so much fun. And but then eventually it started to get darker, it started to get colder, so I decided to head into the festival grounds more. I went around a few of the stages, like back to Trina, then I went to Arena again. And then eventually decided to take my wig off. I decided to get some food, take the wig off, and just kind of like go back into boy mode for the rest of it. This was probably like around midnight or something. And then I went to Arena again, and the Israeli guy that I'd met yesterday, who I exchanged Instagrams with, came to my mind. He'd replied to, because I'd put a story on my Instagram about the guy who'd asked me to take off the pre-Palestine crop top, and this other Israeli guy had replied to it saying, "Oh, that's really cringe that he did that, that he asked me to do that." So I was like, okay, cool, interesting, that's nice. So I decided to message him and see where he was at, and we decided we'd meet at the arena stage, which is where all the big cranes are and stuff like that. So I went to go find him, found him at the arena stage, and I was once again in a kind of like enhanced state of mind, as I think most people at the festival were at that point, but not too heavily so. But yeah, we got talking about all sorts of things. I did bring up the genocide, etc., just to hear his view on it. You know, I wasn't trying to confront him or anything like that. I was kind of bringing it up and also wanted to kind of explain my own thoughts on things, because my thoughts have always been that Zionism is not Judaism. I think Zionism is deeply anti-Semitic, actually. I think that Zionism is just used by the powerful because it is a very convenient tool, because they can just use the suffering of Jewish people to basically attack anyone who criticizes what they're doing, their settler colonialism. Israel is a settler colonial outpost. It is used for testing weapons and surveillance. It is like deeply embedded in our like the Western capitalist system, and it's very convenient for them to be able to say, well, if you oppose that, that makes you anti-Semitic. And it's obviously deeply cynical. I don't believe these people care one bit about Jewish people or Jewish lives. And they just use it because it's very convenient in that way, where they can just say like, oh, we're just doing it because we care about Jewish people, whereas they don't at all. So I wanted to talk to him a bit about that, and let him know where I was coming from. And yeah, the conversation just kind of kept going. We were chatting about lots of different things. So yeah, we were talking and dancing a lot, and the conversation just gradually morphed into like a current state of the world conversation. I know I was looking around at these gigantic cranes around us, these kind of like ruined monoliths of a bygone era. I was hearing like the beat of the music. It all felt very kind of like ritualistic. And I was getting these feelings of kind of like reincarnation, like these cranes have been reborn, have been like repurposed into something else than what they were first made for through human creativity. I see capitalism as a dying machine, definitely. It is falling apart. I see it as a religion, because it is based upon a basic principle that is impossible, which we never discuss and it's just never talked about. And that is that it demands infinite growth. It cannot work without infinite growth, and infinite growth is impossible. It's incredible, right? It's just like we are denying a core fact law of the universe. At the very core, like capitalism was always going to collapse. The way things are going now was always how it was going to go. You know, that's the only way it could go. We like to dress it up in rationality of like GDP, of economic growth, you know, statistics, the stock market, whatever it may be. But I do feel that these are all just kind of like, it's all just masking what it is really, which is a religion, and the god is the economy, and everything can be sacrificed for the economy. Nothing is sacred at all. Nothing, you know, especially human life. And I see this as kind of like a very deeply unnatural and unhealthy system in which we live, which is inherently unstable. And we're seeing that more and more in the world. And I think we're going to see that increasingly so, massively so in the coming years, as we see this like increasing chaos in our world, you know, like political instability, wars, you know, climate change. This is all a product of a system which was never meant to last, which could never last. So I was saying all these things to him and experiencing it all through the festival, and it just felt so deeply profound and meaningful. There were all these things which I knew already, but I just felt them very deeply. I could look around and see all these dancing bodies and stuff like that, and it was I very much thought that we have been doing this since the dawn of time, since the birth of humanity. This is what we've been doing. We've been going to campfires and dancing to a beat, kind of like celebrating life and rebirth. And fundamentally, we are still those people, and that is the true nature of what it is to be human, and we will always do these things. That's why these festivals, these events, pull people in. You know, they want to go to them for like an escape. I heard people say that multiple times that, oh, it feels like a parallel world, you know, here at Whole Festival. And I'm like, this is how the world's meant to be, actually. This is what this is what it used to be, and this is what it will be again one day. You know, the way things are now is not natural, and it is not eternal. As I thought more and more about, you know, the systems in which we live, I really profoundly felt that our illusion of identity, of ego, of self is exactly that, an illusion. Again, this is something which I already knew, but I really felt it very deeply in this moment that we, all the people gathered around here, every person on this earth, are one. We were born from the same nothing. We come from nothing, and that is where we will return. Life is just this brief, ephemeral state in which where we feel like we are separate. And it really made me think back to this book which I read recently called The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm. So indulge me for a moment. I'm just going to read a short passage from it. So he says, "Man is gifted with reason. He is life being aware of itself. He has awareness of himself, of his fellow man, of his past, and of the possibilities of his future. This awareness of himself as a separate entity, the awareness of his own short lifespan, of the fact that without his will he is born and against his will he dies, that he will die before those whom he loves, or they before him, the awareness of his aloneness and his separateness, of his helplessness before the forces of nature and of society, all this makes his separate, disunited existence an unbearable prison. He would become insane if he could not liberate himself from this prison and reach out, unite himself in some form or other with men, with the world outside. The experience of separateness arouses anxiety. It is indeed the source of all anxiety. Being separate means being cut off, without any capacity to use human powers. Hence, to be separate means to be helpless, unable to grasp the world, things and people, actively. It means that the world can invade me without my ability to react. Thus, separateness is the source of intense anxiety. Beyond that, it arouses shame and feelings of guilt. This experience of guilt and shame in separateness is expressed in the biblical story of Adam and Eve. After Adam and Eve have eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, after they have disobeyed, after they have become human by having emancipated themselves from the original animal harmony with nature, i.e., after their birth as human beings, they saw that they were naked and that they were ashamed. So, yeah, I read that book recently, and it really resonated me with very strongly how the core of the human condition is an anxiety around being separate from one another, from everything, because it is, and this separateness is an illusion and we can transcend it, and the way to transcend that is to love one another truly, and it's something many of us struggle with and many of us never achieve. And to love one another truly, you have to understand that they are me. As I was looking at this Israeli friend of mine now, I told him, you are me and I am you. Fundamentally, we are the same being. We just have this illusion of separateness. And it is coming together in these rituals, like at Whole Festival, with the music, with the lights, with all the bodies moving, that for a moment we don't feel so separate anymore, and we can really understand that fundamental truth that we are all one. And that is the key to compassion as well, because as much as I might find someone's behavior disgusting or repugnant, say a Donald Trump or an Elon Musk, I know deep down that they are me and I am them, and that they live in fear, and they are just products of the system. It's very poetic. Of course, the richest person in the world is emotionally bereft and afraid and probably hates himself, I imagine. It makes sense because, of course, this system in which we live does not value those things. It just values acquisition and money. And therefore, the people who thrive, who do well in this system, have to sacrifice so much of themselves until I feel they're totally alienated from themselves and very unhappy people. And while I may hate what they do, ultimately I know that they are victims and they are afraid. People like Elon Musk dream of immortality. They're deeply afraid of death. And that is a really sad state of being, because it means they cannot enjoy life and they cannot love. They cannot love another, they cannot love themselves. And death will come regardless. They think they want immortality, but I truly believe that anyone who could physically attain immortality would go insane and would kill themselves, absolutely, without a doubt. What exists for 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000, 100,000, a million, 100 million, a billion, you'd go insane. You would be desperate to rejoin the universe as you were before. Absolutely desperate. So it, when you kind of like understand these things, and I really felt them so very profoundly in this moment, it gave me a great sense of peace. Peace with the idea of death, that death will come and that death is a gift. Not that I seek death out, but I can be comfortable with when it comes, and that I'm okay with that. And ultimately, nothing matters. Whatever we do, whatever our grand accomplishments may be, whatever conceits we may have of kind of like our ego of being, famous, beloved, or, whatever it might be, ultimately, everything will be forgotten and everyone will return to the infinite nothing from which we came. So it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Really, you should just enjoy life for what it is and enjoy being the universe, because you and I are the universe. We are the universe. And we should just enjoy the experience of being the universe and being aware of ourselves. Isn't that an incredible thing? And we should reach out to other parts of the universe, to each other, and connect and love one another. It really is, I believe, the meaning of life, if you can find any meaning in it. And I know for a fact that people are drawn to these festivals because it is deeply healing. We show humanity a new way of doing things. Look how beautiful things can be. It doesn't matter how rich you are, what your fucking job is, or any of these other status symbols. We're all equal, and we're all beautiful in our own ways. I know it might sound corny saying that, but it's fucking true. It is absolutely true. And we've become so cynical that we kind of like roll our eyes at that, but it's absolutely true. And you can see that. And I think every person has the capacity to see that. We are all born with this innate humanness, and we all have that ability, and we owe it to ourselves to find that love for one another and for ourselves, and it's a great shame that many people don't ever find that. So, after all that, I want to thank my Israeli friend, because I was talking his ear off, saying all these different things. I was having all these different kind of like realizations sweeping over me, and I was just talking, and he he suffered through it very well. He didn't abandon me. He stayed with me, and we shared a really nice moment together. So, yeah, it was very poetic as well. That it was with like someone who comes from a culture which I consider to be very anti-life in many ways, but we found through our shared humanity, it doesn't matter where we came from, we bonded very closely in that moment, and considering we'd only known each other for a few hours, again, that is the beauty of these festivals. You can just meet someone and then have this deep, intimate kind of like shared experience together, and it's just magic. There's no other word for it. So eventually I tired myself out and decided to walk home. I had, at this point, just my fishnet shorts on and the jockstrap underneath. And I was holding a skirt to my chest to try and keep me warm. And I was walking home. It was really cold. It was grim. But I was also feeling very, very awake and very kind of like elated by all these feelings that I'd had. So it was a perfect day. So day 3, I managed to sleep for about 5 hours, which was the most I'd slept since I arrived. So I was feeling okay, generally. I was feeling, I guess, I felt a bit melancholy because it almost felt like a piece of me had died in that moment. A piece of me which feels like I am Max, and I'm like, who am I? What am I? It was very much, that was kind of going around in my head. There'd been a moment the previous night where the Israeli guy had introduced me to some of his friends, and I just marveled in the way we would introduce ourselves. Like, hi, I am Max. Hi, I am whatever their name is. And it's like, we're kind of defining ourselves, but at the same time, we are one. I'm like, no, you are me, You are me, you are Max, and I am whatever your name is, though I know nothing about you, I also know everything about you at the same time because we are both the same, you know? So I was still very much feeling all this stuff, processing it. And so I chose just like a very simple look. I was really cold the previous night, so I decided I wanted to wear some more clothes so that I wouldn't be freezing cold. I didn't really want to kind of like draw attention to myself particularly. I just wanted to kind of like, I think I just wanted to lose myself at that point. I was like, I've had two very kind of like deep, introspective, thoughtful days and nights at Whole Festival. I kind of want to have one of elation and joy now. Like, I want to rebalance things, you know, I want to have like that other side. I've had a lot of kind of like death, not in a bad way, but just kind of like, you know, an ego death. And I want to feel life now. You know, these things are, there's no good or bad. They just are, and you cannot have one without the other. So I just felt like I needed balance. So we went back again on the coach, went to the Forest stage, spent a bit of time there. I met a guy who I shared a really special moment with because I wasn't sexually attracted to him, but I just felt like I was very much in this you are me sort of state of mind, and I just hugged him, and we were just like, I was just asking him about himself, and you know, just asking him what his dreams are and stuff like that. You know, this person I've just met, and it was really special. You know, again, and then eventually we parted ways, and that's that. You know, maybe I'll never see him again. You know. So I spent a fair bit of time at Forest. Then a friend who I knew from London decided to go back to Arena again. So I went to Arena with him. This time I was on a different letter of the alphabet. I was on the letter between D and F. So a very different vibe. Much more kind of like elated. Because I knew that's what I needed in that moment. So we went to Arena and then went up the stairs to kind of this platform that was directly in front of the DJ, and you could look back over the crowd behind you and see these kind of like this towering monolith of the crane, and you could see these two kind of towers to either side with lights shining in, and there's this smoke over the crowd. It was a very powerful image. And then I think it's around 10 p.m. This figure appeared from behind, like the backstage area behind the DJ, and I knew instantly this was something very special. They kind of like crept in, like in a very kind of like primal sort of animalistic way, really wide eyes, kind of like staring, almost unblinking. And I was transfixed by this person. I was like, who are they? And they started dancing, and it was these incredible, like erratic but also very fluid, sensual movements at the same time. I got a lot of videos, so I'll be showing those now. To a lot of people, they would appear, I guess, maybe scary, but I didn't see them as scary at all. I saw this person as someone who is enlightened. This is a person that knows themselves, that does not feel shame because they know that they are sacred in some way. They are divine. They are the universe, is sort of the feeling I was getting from this person. And they raised these incense sticks up, and I really felt like, okay, this is a ritual that's being conducted, and they are the kind of like priest or priestess of this ritual. And they had breasts, they had their penis out, even though obviously I'm not going to show that here on YouTube. You know, they were all of humanity in one, in a way. So they were divine. I really felt like this was like a divine presence, very kind of like religious in some ways. The way they would move, and also they would like lick their fingers and kind of like move their fingers around themselves and stuff like that. It was like they were I am the universe and I am reveling in my own existence. Look at me, look at my shape, you know, look at my forms. Aren't I beautiful, you know? And I was very much like, yes, you are beautiful. We are all beautiful. Look at us, you know. Look at what it is to be human, was really kind of the feeling I was getting from this person. And I was just completely transfixed. And I know I was not the only one. There were lots of people there who I know afterwards were telling me like, wow, wasn't this person incredible? They were like, people messaging on the forums like, who are they? I also asked on Reddit like, who is this person? And then I found their Instagram through that. I felt so lucky to have been there. Like, I didn't know they were going to be performing there, and it was exactly what I needed in that moment in time. Every so often they would make eye contact with me in these like very wide eyes, and I would just hold the eye contact. And I can't know what they were thinking or feeling, but to me it was very much like, I see you and you see me and you are me and I am you. That's very much kind of like what I had, and I was kind of like raising my arms up like this because it was very much like a ritual. So I was just like, I am in the ritual and I am worshipping you, you know. And with the music as well, the DJs were incredible. It was you know, like a lot of people I think are put off by techno music. It's like, oh, it's not music, it's just a beat and stuff like that. But I'm like, this is pure simplicity. This is like the beat of the heart, you know, and we're all unified to this same beat and the same rhythm in this moment. And it's very kind of like entrancing. It's almost hypnotizing when you're in that right frame of mind for it. After a while, I turned around again and looked at the crowd, and I took this video specifically for this because you could see the crowd below, and then this monolith of a crane, and then there was this smoke above, and it just dissolved into the night sky, and you could see some of the stars. And I thought it was so poetic, you know. It's like, here we are alive, moving as one, and above is the great infinite nothing from which we came and to which we will return. It felt very, very profound. After a few hours, I ran off back to the lockers to get my Palestine flag that I had tucked away in there. I'd brought it with me not knowing that it's against the rules to have flags, but I'd heard from various people that it was against the rules, so I hadn't got it out yet. But I was like, no, this is the moment. I want to fly my Palestine flag. So I went to go get it, back up on stage, and then held it up in front of the crowd. And that was so special. Like, I saw so many people kind of like raising their fists or kind of like showing solidarity in whatever way. And it was just such a beautiful moment of kind of like connection. I did see like a couple of people pull their faces, presumably Israeli, but it didn't matter to me at all in that moment. So that was so special. It lasted about 5 minutes before a member of staff came up to me and told me to put the flag away. I wasn't bothered though. Like, I understand the rule. Like, if Israelis brought the Israeli flag, it could like get messy and nasty very quickly. So I understand why they have that rule. But I also know, kind of like, as a queer person, I feel like it's your duty to know when to break the rules. And I knew that I had to in that moment. You know, that was my duty. So yeah, it was really, really special. The rest of the night, I didn't really do that much. I kind of just, I went to the Forest stage again for a bit with some friends. But I felt kind of I felt very deeply in that moment that I had completed. That whole festival was whole for me. It was complete. I had done everything that I wanted to do. I knew that that was that for me. A part of me wanted, because they didn't take the flag off me, so a part of me wanted to fly it again at the closing set. But at this point, it was like 4 a.m. and I was so tired. I was like, I cannot last another 4 hours or however long it is to the closing set. And then I've got a really long journey. My flight is at 6 p.m. Like, you know, like awful. So I was like, I need to get back and try and sleep a bit, you know. So I surrendered. I went to my locker and got my stuff. I messaged my Israeli friend who I'd been talking to the previous night. We had a hug. I got my stuff and went back to the campsite with Matham. Yeah, feeling very complete, very happy, knowing that yeah, like I couldn't have asked more for Hull. Obviously, there's so many things that are happening at a festival like this. You can't do everything. It's impossible. But it had been everything that it needed to be for me. You know, I would not change a thing. I have no regrets about it. Knowing that I'm definitely going to go again, and it will be a different experience next time, and that's exciting. I don't want to repeat the same thing again. You know, I want to always be embracing change. And yeah, I know that I'm going to have a fantastic time next time as well. So yeah, one last look back, and then we left back to the campsite, slept for about 90 minutes, something like that, and then really had to get ready to leave quickly. Went to the showers. There was a big orgy happening. I think it's like a tradition at this point. But there were some showers around the back which weren't occupied, so I went to those, dashed back, packed up my stuff, and then ran to the bus, which was at like 20 past 10 in the morning. And that was it. Everyone who I was with was like exhausted. They were all sleeping, and I was like completely buzzing, like just filled with like the deep significance of everything that had happened this weekend for me. Filled, yeah, with so many different feelings, just thinking about all the things I've been talking about in this video. Yeah, so I definitely wasn't going to be able to sleep. However, I did have a feeling of like wanting to share this. I wanted to tell people all the kind of experiences I'd had and the kind of like realizations and stuff, but obviously everyone was exhausted, and also I know not everyone is like necessarily ready to understand these things, and that's not like to say they're better or worse or whatever. It's just we're all at on different paths in our lives, and I do feel very lucky to have reached this kind of like deep realization of like the true nature of existence, I guess. I felt like a deep sense of peace. I felt more patient with people since then. I don't know, it's very early days, obviously. It's been less than a week, but you know, feelings of kind of jealousy and shame, I say they don't really make sense when you realize that, you know, we are all the same. We're all of the same being, basically. And that's our separateness is just kind of like a construct of the mind. You know, it just makes you give people a bit more grace and realize, you know, none of us are perfect. And we all deserve love, and we all deserve to treat each other with kindness. So Matham and I hung around in Berlin for a bit after we got back, had some food, and then went to the airport. Upon arriving to the airport, Matham realised he'd lost his passport. He'd in the dash to the bus at the festival, I guess it had fallen out of his pocket. So he wasn't going to be flying that day. So that was pretty stressful for him. I helped out as best I could. But eventually I had to part ways, leave him at the airport, and then I went to my flight back. But he's back now, he's doing great. Yeah, unfortunately, you know, financially a little worse off for it, I guess, but apart from that, doing fine. Then I met up with some more friends, because people everywhere I know at the airport who had just come from the festival, and we were on the train back from Gatwick Airport back into London, and I was just looking out over the city, which is the financial district, the main financial district of London, and I was just looking at it, kind of like glass and dominating the skyline, you know, insisting on its permanence and its infallibility, you know, it's like gleaming perfection in the sunlight. And I kind of felt like I was seeing it for what it is. I was like, this is the religious core of our society, you know, it is the church of 2026, and it too one day will fall and fade and will be looked back on as a relic of this time, you know, nothing is eternal. And I was thinking back to the cranes at Hull Festival, and I was like, well, maybe one day we'll be dancing next to these monoliths of our current age, you know, and they'll have lights on them and artwork and stuff like that, and they'll have, you know, all this like inhuman perfection of glass will have been transformed into something much more human and much more beautiful in the future. Who knows, you know? And all I know is that nothing is forever, and that life is death, death is life, and that whatever happens, we humans will find a way to we will find a way to reinvent ourselves and to reinvent the world around us. We will reincarnate and become something else again. And that is the beauty of being human, I think, or one of the beauties. And so that was my whole festival. Needless to say, I got all the artistic inspiration I could have asked for and more besides. I've got so many ideas swirling around in my head. I just have to make this YouTube video first and get it out there. And then I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about, what I want to do artistically with all this information in my head. I say definitely themes of like reincarnation, of ritual, of queer joy and color, bringing life to ruined structures. These are all, and the contrast between the organic forms of the body and these kind of like rigid mechanical forms of the machine. These are all kind of things I've got in my head right now that I want to explore, so I'm really excited to do that. And I'm also leaving Whole Festival with a new perspective on life for sure, which I wasn't expecting. Looking back, I didn't really learn anything new per se in terms of like all these things I kind of knew already, but Whole Festival sort of acted as like a forge which kind of fused them all together and kind of brought together this much deeper understanding. Like, it's one thing knowing that you are part of the universe and you are the universe, and it's another completely other thing to really feel it. That's just the only way I can describe it. And I also leave with lots of very special memories with very special people, and I feel genuinely so lucky to know such beautiful people. Many of them I've mentioned in this video, many I haven't. And yeah, I know some truly special people. That is the privilege of being queer, is, we're born into a hard world that doesn't really accept us. So we have to find our own community and our own meaning. And I think that kind of really does make us into quite exceptional people a lot of the times, because we have to be. And that's why the queer community is always like on the cutting edge of, art and culture. It just, of course we are, because we're always having to forge new identities and new meaning, and knowing that we'll never really fit in the status quo, and kind of like always looking for new ways to do things. And that is the beauty of Whole Festival, is that events like this are just full of so much potential. Like, it really is what you make of it. I had a very deeply personal experience to me, based upon where I was at in my life, with my thoughts and with my experiences, etc. Someone else could have had a completely different experience based upon where they're at, and there's no like better or worse. There's no value judgment in that. It just is what it is. You are a very important part of the equation when it comes to coming to these events. Like, there is no objective. Oh, Whole Festival was good, Whole Festival was bad. What you bring to it matters a lot. So if you bring like a very good open-minded attitude and a loving attitude, then I don't really feel like you can go wrong. Like, there's such incredible artists there. It's such a special environment, and so many special people that you can find a good time, guaranteed, I think. So if you haven't been to Whole Festival, I think you really owe it to yourself, if you can, to go. I think you'll have a fantastic time. I can't guarantee anything, but I say all the ingredients are there to have an incredible time if you are open to that. And also, if you have been to Whole Festival this year or previous years, I would be really interested. I know it's like to drive up engagement, get comments and stuff, but no, I genuinely would be really interested to hear what your experiences were. I heard, like, looking at the forums, that I say it was a bit of a better crowd this year and a bit of a better atmosphere compared to the previous years, so that's nice. It's nice to see things take a good turn rather than just feeling like everything's getting worse all the time. So yeah, please do share your experiences if you were there. And if you're interested in where I take all this artistically, then give me a follow here on YouTube or Instagram or whatever it might be, because I'm going to be definitely posting a lot of stuff over the coming weeks and months, inspired by this experience. So I'm excited, very excited to see what comes of that. It feels like I found my kind of like artistic purpose. Like I feel a lot of resolve there. So yeah, just so excited. And if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for your support. I hope you've enjoyed it very much and found it interesting in some way, whatever it might be. Yeah. So yeah, thanks very much, and until next time, cheers.